Hello, welcome to the August 29th, 2025 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo, and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de or simply enter them in the chat field. We will go through all of the questions chronologically as asked in the live stream. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase that you're using. Also, so if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro. Also, which version number, so if it's 12, 13, 14, and which operating systems, if it's on Windows or Mac OS, that information will be helpful. We should have an index of all of the topics that are covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream ends. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you can go to cubaseindex.com. And we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that website. We have two people that serve as moderators. We have Jazz Dude and Agent K. So they're not Steinberg employees. They do it to make it a better community experience. So we will give special thanks to them. Also, we want to give Jazz Dude a special extra layer of thanks and gratitude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord, which is a great resource of information available for the Steinberg community. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products there, and I'm presenting from outside of, in the United States, from outside of Washington, D.C. in Alexandria, Virginia. If you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. Today is the last live stream of the month, so that means in about 2 hours we will start our Zoom social meetup. So if as we're doing that, so it's a great way to meet different people that are on the live stream. I'll post a link to it now. But it's always a really great time of discussion, and it's always look forward to catching up with people and hear other people talk from the live streams besides myself. So we'll get that started in about an hour and 56 minutes or so. So starting at 3 o'clock U.S. Eastern Time, so about 2 hours, a little under 2 hours. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we see Stefan joining from Sweden. We have Ogie joining from New York. Dwight Cunningham checking in from the Bahamas. And his question is, Greg, can you explain Halion Sonic standalone, please? So let's come over and take a quick look. So if we wanted to open up Halion Sonic and just run it as an instrument. So let's say I was going out performing live. So if we come over, we'll go to, let's say, our applications. I think I have Halion Sonic installed. All right, so now we have this. So sometimes you may want to go out and just, like how we would have a particular, setup for like going out and we're doing a live concert with a keyboard player and we want to have access to different sounds within, Halion, but we don't necessarily need to run Cubase as a particular host application. So, I know that I just want to be able to play these particular sounds and load up presets and have different MIDI channels. We can, at this point, just run Halion Sonic as a standalone program without starting in Cubase. So if you just take your laptop and want to go out. So I just saw my friend last week. I was lucky enough I got to go see a Tiny Desk concert from NPR. Which is always a fascinating series, and he performed. My friend Clay is his musical director for Gloria Stefan, so she was doing a Tiny Desk concert, And I think pretty much all of his sounds are coming off of Halion or Halion Sonic for his live use. So when they're going out playing live. So in the United States, they also did Good Morning America a week ago today. So like when they go out and actually perform, most of their sounds are just coming straight from software instruments, and they use like Halion and Halion Sonic as standalone instruments just for live performance, where they don't need a DAW to host it. But if you just want to go out and play a gig, take your Halion Sonic with you and load up all your sounds and have wonderful music. All right, so we see Tim K joining from Zeist in the Netherlands. His cat Buddy is waving a paw hello to all the other pets. I will say hi to my cat Steven, but he's asleep on my couch behind me now. Great to have you on, Tim. Always wonderful to see Jazz Dude on. We see Terry Gray checking in from Minneapolis. You've been in my thoughts the last couple of days with current events. Hope you're well and your family hasn't, or anyone you know has been affected personally. All right, so we see from James Dazell, says, "Hi Greg, question, when selecting a track, is there a way to keep one track arm record while selecting another track? The record arm goes off when selecting another track." So I believe it's just going to be a preference. So I'm going to come over here. So right now, let's say I go to this audio track. We can have this automatically record enabled when the track is selected. So, and if we go to your preferences or settings and we go to editing, and I believe it's under project and mix console, you'll see enable record on selected audio track. So let's say I have channel audio 02 set up for record enable. Now I'll hit apply. So now that I've disabled that preference, I could come here. That track stays record enabled. I could come over here. So now the track selection doesn't have any effect on the record enable status. So come to your preferences or settings, depending on your operating system. Go to editing, to project and mix console, and disable enable record on selected audio track. So now when you select a track, that's automatically record enabled. So let me know if that's helpful for you, James. Thanks for joining us today. All right, Steve Green asks, "Hi Greg, when I drag a pattern from Beat Agent to a new Groove Agent track, the pattern is placed into a separate MIDI track, not the Groove Agent track." All right, so let's say I have a Beat Agent kit here. Okay, and let me just load up kit with some patterns. Okay, so let's say we have our patterns here. So let me switch my audio interface so everyone can hear it. All right, so let's say we have, so I'm just going to drag this pattern right to the particular track. So I think if we just maybe let's see if we double click on the pattern, if it adds it elsewhere. Or if I just kind of drag it. So here I'm just going to drag it to the Groove Agent track. So over here. So we'll open up the Groove Agent. So if I want to, I just drag it, and you can kind of see like the little outline, like the little green line as we do that. I'll just turn this down to kill a little bit so we're not overloading. But try just to, as we drag it to the particular track, it just automatically shows right there. But it could be like if you're dragging it to the track or you're dragging it below But, you know, wherever you drag it to, and you'll see like that little green outline just to the left of the pattern, that would indicate what track it's being dragged to. So let me know if I'm doing something differently than you are. Steve, all right. All right, we see Tony Trunzo checking in from Australia. Rick France, just wishing everyone happy Friday from the Pacific Northwest. Wonderful to see Gareth checking in from Bilbao, Spain. All right, and we see Martin joining from Germany. Okay, so we see from Augie or Ogie. Let me know how to pronounce that, just so you can spell it out phonetically if you get a chance. It says, how can I record a reverb tail when using hold freeze on a reverb plugin? Reverb is on effects track. I'm using Cubase Pro 14. All right, so let's say if we come here and I want all right, so I will. All right, so let's say I want to put a monster reverb on this. And I want to record the reverb tail to an audio file. So let's. All right, so right now, so we have our reverb. Now our reverb is going out to, let's say, our stereo out, but let's see if I could route this to a group. Not be able to. Let's see if we can. Yeah, I don't think we could. But if you want it to, so let's say I come and I want to, so we have our reverb on a snare. So we'll come over here. I'll just paint in a note here. All right, so we have this one event, so we come over here. So we're going to have just that reverb on the snare. Okay, so one of the things that we could do if we want to kind of print the particular tail of that is, you know, if we go to render in place. So we'll come over here. Let me not do it with current settings. I will. So let's say we want our complete signal path. We could also put a tail mode on. So you can say, okay, I want this to be, you know, a 2-second tail. And we'll come over here, so let's just render. We'll do a render in place. We're going to select this particular, I guess we had the event selected, so we can come over. So let's come over. So we want to include the complete signal path. We'll render, and now our reverb, when we listen to this particular track, that is automatically kind of rendered with the reverb right there. So you could, And another method that you could do is if you have, like, let's say if we adjust our reverb time here. So we'll just make it like a 4-second reverb. All right, so now when we come here, we'll play our drum. Okay, so if I wanted just the reverb, you know, what you could do also is if you go to your export audio mixdown, we could just come over here and say, okay, we want to go to our effect channels, and we'll say, okay, we want our reverb. So if we go here to multiple, I could just say we're going to create an audio track, and let's export the audio mixdown. And let me see if I made settings right here. So when you go to export the audio mixdown, we could choose to create an audio track here. And let me set the left and right locators around the event. That would help. So now we just have the reverb rendered here. So that way we could just also just choose to render just the reverb effect. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, so we see Jorge checking in from Portugal. Thanks for joining us. We see Balsa from Montenegro, just wishing everyone well. We see Uno Memento from Finland. All right, Lewis asks, is there a way to record a vocal and have Cubase suggest chords? Okay, so I'll just do a new project. And so if you do an analysis of it, you know, it's ideal if you have obviously chords to kind of work with. But let's say I want to import, let's say, a track from a project. So I'll just import a vocal from this project here. And we'll say lead vocal. Okay, so now what I want to do is so we listen to this, we'll just have
the day we first met, that was a long, long time ago.
All right, let me switch my project sample rate here. Hang on. So this is apparently a 48.
It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach.
All right, so I'm going to add a chord track. So ideally, you'd want to have chords as an audio file or MIDI information, but even if you take our lead vocal and we drag it to a chord track, it'll probably give us some chords as it kind of sees kind of chords.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time ago.
And if we wanted to, let's just put like an instrument track. We'll do like an A2. We'll just do a piano part. So I will come over to my Halion Sonic here. All right. So say I just want to go to Etude. And as we do this, I'll just say we're going to use the monitor tracks.
First met, that was a long, long time ago. It was 7th grade in the school parking lot.
So it's not always going to be able to determine chords from just a melody, but it could give you kind of a ballpark and kind of do a good guesstimate. But if you have like, a part that has chords, it's much more, it could be, obviously more accurate, but you could have Cubase suggest chords based on that. Okay. Okay, so we see from Tony Trunzo, Greg, in the Media tab, what is the Reconstruct and how would you use it, please? So sometimes you may have an audio file. So when you see kind of Reconstruct, so like, every time we have an audio file, there's going to be an associated image file. And so when we look at this is like the actual picture of the waveform is, that's the image. So we have the audio file and an image file, which is the representation of the audio waveform. Sometimes you may import an audio file and it may not have an image as it's being imported. So if the waveform has no image, at that point you could just come over here to media and then choose to reconstruct, and that will reconstruct the waveform image of the file. So it's not going to change any sound, it's not going to make up a new file, it's just reconstructing the waveform image. All right, we see Gobe Berg checking in from Austria. Louis Lazaro says, do we ask questions here? So yes, that's all you got to do. All right, we see Michael Sprunt saying hi from Canada. Thanks for joining us today. Tim Weinheimer just says, thanks for all your help with Wavelab Pro 12. You're welcome. We see Ted Springman. Great to see you on. All right. All right, Marius Marios asks, sorry about that. I have Cubase Elements 14. I use the encoder as my MIDI keyboard to control the cursor and locator, but I can't go backwards. Example from bar 5 to 3, only forward. How do I fix that? So I think when Steinberg came out with like 14.03, the update, that was one of the things that had changed in 14.03, and then there was a hot fix to address that. So the latest version of Cubase that you have is 14.032. So make sure that you have the 14.032, and that will resolve it. And that way you could go backwards with your remote control. So it's just something that got broken in 14.03. All right, we see John Costigan checking in from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Great to have you on. Paul Erhimona asks, can you return the easy gain button on vocal waves to where it was in Cubase 5? It's more easy. All right, so we had a lot of people when they were switching from other programs to Cubase that, most other programs would have like your clip gain right here. Now, another thing that you could do is if you just, come over and, let's say if we just grab, I think if we just, we could also adjust clip gain, so, I think it's pretty straightforward just to kind of go to the lower left-hand corner. Now, there is a way of adjusting kind of the clip gain. Let me see if I get my modifiers right. But if we come over to your settings, and there are like different tool modifiers. So if we go to the select tool, Let's see if it's... I think it might be, but I think it was Command or Control plus Shift that you could adjust. Let me see if I take it off. So if you just hold down Command plus Shift, you could also just grab anywhere in the waveform with the selection tool. So, and then you could just move it up or down right there. So that's even easier because you don't have to go to the top center portion. You could just kind of go directly anywhere on the waveform with the selection tool and just holding down Control or Command plus Shift. So you don't have to navigate to the top center, which is helpful if you're here, or navigate to the lower corner or lower left-hand corner. You can just come right over here and have access to it right there. All right. All right, so we see Terry Gray says, thanks, Greg. It's been a tough few days there in Minneapolis. Appreciate the thoughts. Yeah. Yeah, especially, yeah, it's heartbreaking to me, especially as I have a son starting 7th grade next on Tuesday. So, all right, we see Vince checking in from Winnipeg. All right. All right. All right, we see Manfig checking in from Santa Barbara, California, wishing everyone a great Labor Day weekend in the United States. And Ted Springman is just commenting that Santa Barbara Beach is the best, so it doesn't suck there. All right. All right, Balsa asks a question. Any chance to add random search results when searching and going through files in the media file browser? All right, so one thing that you can do is, so it may not be random, but you know, it could, but depending on, so let's say if I'm here and I'm looking for, you know, I'm looking for kicks, and generally these will always kind of show up alphabetically. So let's say I just come here, kick. So there's always a tendency to use the names that come at the top alphabetically. But if you click here, there is a little button for shuffle results, and that will give you kind of, you know, that way it's not always going to be alphabetically. So if you want to try out like new kicks, you could just say, instead of this, you know, always being alphabetized, now we could just shuffle the results. So this way we could have the ability not to always have the same contents show up at the top or within the first like field of view, but just come right over there and shuffle the results. And depending on how far, you know, if you don't want any results, let's say I'm just looking for audio files here that have no name, you could just click on shuffle, and so when I click on shuffle again, we get completely different results every time. So if you want kind of to find sounds that you don't see all the time, try clicking on shuffle, and that could randomize the order of how the plugins appear or how the files appear in the media bay. All right, wonderful to see Razel checking in from Denmark. All right, Daniel Doug Beatty asks, hi, is there a way to toggle on all tracks monitors? There is a way to toggle on all track monitors, but there isn't the opposite to turn it off. Kindly assist. Okay. All right, so let me just come over here. I'm going to add number of audio tracks. So let's say I'll go to the key command here. me just check what the all right, so let me just do edit monitor, and I assigned a keyboard shortcut to that. So that will turn it all on and off. So that will, so for all selected tracks. Now if you want it for, and let's just see if I have no tracks selected. So that will do it for, and if we want it not for selected tracks, but for all tracks, what we could do is just come over here. Let's go to our project logical editor. So we can say media type, we'll say container type is equal to track. Okay, I'll remove that. And what we want to do, we're going to transform, and we will come over here and say we want to go to track operation. We want to, let's choose our monitor, and then we could just choose to toggle. So now I don't have, let's say I have one track selected. I could globally monitor enable all of the tracks, and I could just toggle that, and then we could store that with a within a project logical editor preset. So I'll just save this. So again now, so tracks don't have to be selected. So you could have a keyboard shortcut for the selected tracks, but if you want it to be global, you could use the project logical editor. Choose to transform, container type is equal to track, track operation, we want to choose monitor and toggle. So let me know if that's helpful for you. I'm going to paste the Zoom social link here. All right, wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas joining us. All right, so we see Louis Lazaral just says, it's my birthday, by the way, Cubase license as a present. Yeah, so 2 weeks ago we did our Club Cubase live stream. But maybe wait till next week. There might be some goodies coming next week. All right, and Lewis just says, Logic user realizing Cubase is far better for my needs. Yeah, so check out, wait till next week. All right, wonderful to see Jason Sykes joining from South Yorkshire, England. All right, Lewis Lazarow just says, IE from England too. That's great. We see Bratman Studio joining from Uptown Whittier. And he's got his breakfast and he's ready to party on the live stream. Hope you're feeling well from your COVID. Okay, so we see Doughboy. It says, hi Greg, was wondering when using Arpache 5, how can I get the MIDI information to show up in the key editor instead of it only showing me the chords I played? Hopefully I worded that correctly. So yeah, I think you got it. All right, I see Michael Teams just saying that he doesn't see the password on his Zoom meeting. So let me let me just open up Zoom real quick. I'll answer this question. I'll open up Zoom. All right, so let's say we have a Halion Sonic track here. All right, so we'll come over here. And we want this to do our MIDI inserts. I'll just come over here. So let's go to our Arpache 5. All right, so when I go to record, so there's two different approaches that we could take for this. I have my Arpache 5, so I'm going to record just let me just turn that off. Okay. Okay, so let's say I'm just going to record, and I'll just open up my virtual keyboard here. All right, so when we go to record, I'll just all right, so when we do this, we actually just record kind of the block chords, and then it's played back through the Arpache plugin. So if we just listen to it, we would just hear. Now when the plugin is turned on, all right, so when we do that, let's come over to the Arpache. And so I want to transform these block chords into chords. What I would do, if you already have those chords recorded, go to your MIDI menu and you want to choose Freeze MIDI Modifiers. Now you can see that it goes from block chords to the Freeze MIDI Modifiers. Now we see the arpeggiation from the Arpache. It bypasses Arpache, and then those changes are written into the particular file. Now, so that's a way if you already have kind of block chords present. If you want to actually record with it, you'll see this little white line here. I'm going to move this down into MIDI inserts. And now as I move this line down, when I go to just play back a chord, and I'll just... So now what we're doing is actually recording So once we move that line down, this plugin, the results of this particular plugin are being recorded into the track in real time. So if you want to record it initially, that way you could do it. If you already have kind of the block chords that are running through the arpeggio, just choose to go to the Freeze MIDI Modifiers from the MIDI menu. All right, let me see if I could get the zoom. I'm going to open up the zoom settings here quickly and show the meeting invite. So maybe if someone wants to just enter in, let me just come over so that people could get to it. Michael Teams emailed me that. Thank you for emailing Michael. All right, so I'm going to copy this over. And I'll paste it into, just join the live stream from my computer here. I'll paste it in. I'll be altering the space-time continuum here. So let me know, Michael, if you can get to the link from there. I'll keep that open for now. Thanks for reaching out. All right, and I'll make sure that we turn the volume down there. All right. See, Lewis just says can't afford it, but he's hoping to join. And he's a broken neuroscience student, so you get the educational discount. So, okay. Okay, so we see Pastoral Apologetics joining from Southeast Texas. Thanks for being online with us. We see John Barry from the English Riviera. All right. Louis Lazarow just says, you can tell Steinberg really tries to make the software great in a way I don't feel like any other does. Look at all the features. That's a great point. Yeah, there's a lot of great design intention that goes on with the Steinberg team. Okay. All right, so we see Ted Springman says about Absolute 6 on a cross grade, but it won't install on my laptop until I fire up my old Mac and move my old licenses to the new paradigm. Says, I hope that's intuitive. Looking forward to Groove Agent 5. So I think you'll find it pretty straightforward. Also, there is a video on the Steinberg YouTube channel that was just released just a couple weeks ago about how to migrate your licenses. So if you run into any issues, just reach out to me, Ted. I'd be happy to help you with that. See, Balsa just says, hey, Greg, shuffle results button is great. It would be cool to add it also in the file browser tab, not just for Cubase stock sounds, so we can shuffle our sounds to Media Bay window has it for both. All right. Not just for Cubase stock sounds. So, we could... So let's say I want to come over here to my Media Bay, and I'll just show it. And, so we're not going to, add the shuffle to your browser. But let's say if I want to come over here and I want to go to this particular file, and I'm looking for, let's say, audio files in this folder. So let me see if I just come over here. And now we could just kind of click on shuffle here for any file. And I could see all of the results within Media Bay. I think if we go to, and, this could be not only, audio files. So let's say if I want to go to this computer and I want to look for projects. So now I could shuffle the results of all of my projects as well. So instead, so they're not just showing up by name. So let me know if that's useful for you. Let's send a text someone real quick. Bear with me just a second. Just messaging my friend Gary Escal. Used to write for Mix Magazine. Great journalist and composer. Okay. All right, so we see it's Louis Lazaro and Flyv's birthday today. Happy birthday from everyone on the Club Cubase live stream. Okay, Balsa asks, can you explain what checked and unchecked boxes represent in the left zone of the Media Bay window? I want to set it to show and use only 2 folders for my computer where my audio samples are. Thanks. So when we're in the Media Bay, and we come over here, we could just say, okay, let's go to, not the pool window, let's go to media bay. So when we see folders that are checked, so say we go to this and we go to, let's say under documents, like I may not want all of my particular, let's say I don't want my Cubase live stream project here, I don't want to look for audio files in that folder. So if it's unchecked, then Cubase won't look into that particular folder for content. So checked, when a folder is checked to the left, it's looking into that folder. But let's say you have your taxes, your family photos on the same computer, PDF files for manuals. You may not need to see PDFs or family photos while you're searching for files in Cubase. So this could restrict particular folders that Cubase is searching in. So let me know if that helps and makes sense. Okay. See Brian Sawyer joining from, sending greetings from the deserts of Arizona. All right, we see Jazz Dude mentioning the Cubase 14 book that just arrived. So for him yesterday, he highly recommends it. All right, so Ted Springman just says, learning Cubase is like climbing Mount Fuji in the dead of winter, unless, of course, you discovered Greg Undo and Club Cubase, and it's a walk in the park on a sunny day. So thank you for the great comment, Ted. It means a lot. All right, we see Nick from Essex in the UK says, hi, people might not make Zoom tonight, but he's whacked the like button. So we hope to see you on, but we understand if you can't make it. Okay. So we see from Doughboy just says, thanks for answering that, Greg. So you're welcome. All right, so we see 19 Stride says, bounce selection doesn't work when I try to merge two separate audio events. All right, so let's take a quick look. All right, so the bounce selection is going to do it, I believe, on a single file. So let's come over here. Let me just... All right, so let's say if we come here. Okay, so let's say if I select these two events here, if they're on separate tracks, I believe that it's not going to bounce those together. So it'll bounce them independently, but if we're on kind of the same tracks, if I hold down Shift and double click, we could select all of, let's say if I have these three events selected, and then we do a bounce selection, then that will automatically, so it's going to kind of maintain it on the lane. So if you want to bounce selection and, you know, merge these into one file, we would use the render in place. So when we go to render settings, at this point we could have this option to mix down to one audio file. So let's say here I'll put this bottom, the track below, in kind of the in-between areas here. So now if I select these and we want to mix down to a single audio file, when we go to render in place, we go to the render settings, and then I will just come over here, and as we render, we can see that we'll have the first file rendered with the second file. They could be overlapping, but I just did this for kind of demonstration purposes here. So let me know if that makes sense, but it seems like, you know, we could take like these files here. Let's see if we do a bounce selection. If multiple files here on separate tracks, I think it'll just keep each of the tracks separated. So the bounce selection will do everything on the particular track. So let me know if that makes sense. Okay, so we see Jose says, "Hi Greg, thanks for sharing your knowledge." So you're welcome. Question: when using Halion Sonic, is there a way to use Media Browser to preview or listen to a program sound without having to load it first? Okay, so let's just come over here. Let's get to my Media Bay. I'm going to jump home. Let's get to my VST instruments. So I'm going to scroll down to Halion Sonic. So let's say, okay, I want to go through FM. So I'm just going to come over here. So then I could just kind of click here and preview my sounds. And say, okay, I like that one. I could double click. That's automatically going to load that sound up. The name of the sound is the track name. And now when we open this up, we can see that that's automatically, that sound that we previewed is automatically included right there. So just preview from the media bay, and then you should be all set. Let me know if that's helpful for you. Right. Okay, reading through comments. See, Batman Studio also got the Cubase book. All right. All right, Daniel Doug Beatty says, how do I pick signal back to my mixer without recording for live streaming, please? So it really depends on your audio interface. And if you enable a loopback function, most audio, most contemporary audio interfaces will have this function. So the interface I'm using is a Steinberg UR242. So when I go to my studio setup, you can see, so I have one UR242. So in Cubase, I'm using it for my DAW. But if I was to go to Zoom or another service or OBS, which is what I'm currently using, I would set the main audio output here to go to, so I have a UR242C. So I can say this is going to my DAW, and I could also have a different driver. And this is how the Steinberg driver works. And if I wanted to route this out for live streaming, I would just use this driver for Zoom or OBS. And then if I wanted to connect to my microphone so that I could speak, I would use this as the input driver. So I could have my microphone connected directly into my audio interface. I could be streaming this audio from Cubase, and both of those sources are going out to the streaming driver. So it's not necessarily a Cubase function, but it's going to be a function of your audio interface that allows you to do that. All right. Okay. See, Jazz Dude says the Cubase book is heavy and can use it as a door stopper after reading. And see, Jazz Dude says he bought it as a reference / homage to Darren Jones. I think I read that Darren had passed away from cancer, so it's truly sad and heartbreaking to read that. All right, so we see from Balsa says, thanks, Greg, for the tips on Media Bay. I guess I'm transitioning from using the right zone and project window and searching for my audio files in there. There's no shuffle button to using F5 Media Bay more. So I think if we If you want to do it for your audio files, let's just take a look. So let's say, okay, I want to come here to my file browser. So let's say here's my audio files found in this particular folder. So let's see if, yeah, I see that there isn't kind of a shuffle mode there. But let's say if we come here, I go to this particular folder here. If you hit F5 Media Bay, you can now, I believe that folder is still the one that is selected. So let's come over here. So, but yeah, but you know, you could definitely do it here, but maybe not within the file browser for shuffle. So, but yeah, play around with that and see if that makes sense for your workflow. All right. See, Ted Springman says, years ago I recorded the computer reading the Cubase 14 manual. I believe the total running time was 40 hours. It may be close to 50 hours now, probably even longer. But yeah, it's a good tactic. All right, so we see from Solid Gold Entertainment says, hi Greg, Jerry here from Ballymena, Northern Ireland. When I load a MIDI channel, I obviously get a MIDI fader along with it, but I can't use it. I go to the plugin fader. Am I missing out? All right, so let's say we'll just do a new project here. All right. Okay, so I'm going to add, just make sure. Okay, so you're using it with, so let's say I go to my rack. I want to, we'll add in. All right, so here we say, do you want to create a MIDI track that's assigned to the plugin grant? So I'm going to create a MIDI track. Okay, so, and we'll come over here. Let's just do a little upright piano action. Okay, so as, all right, so when we go to my mix console here, so I think when we do this, you may notice that, so, you know, this will kind of stay at 0, and generally by default it will use the VST instrument volume until you have a MIDI volume that's adjusted. So, you know, it may not do anything until, and how like a MIDI continuous controller information would work, like for MIDI CC7, we can just kind of come over here that it doesn't take effect until there is an actual message. So you may see this. Many people would choose just to, you know, we have 127 values of levels of automation, and we could adjust kind of with the VST instrument track, but this will not really take effect until it's been changed. So, but you know, when you do a MIDI track that's routed to the VST rack, at that point you have both the MIDI volume for the MIDI track and the track for the volume, so they can work together or they can fight against each other. Most people prefer to not touch the MIDI volume and will do all of the automation in the particular, you know, at the instrument level. So that probably, I think, is how most people work, and most people kind of avoid the, you know, extra layer or extra potential layer of information by just using an instrument track, and that kind of consolidates the two. Thanks for joining us from Northern Ireland. I was just in Dublin earlier this summer on vacation with my family. We had a great time. We didn't make it up to Northern Ireland though. Probably next time if we go. All right, Sable Winters is wishing happy birthday to Fly V and to Lazaro. Lazaro, I'm just looking for to Louis Lazaro. Okay, you see Benny is out on a gig, but joining in to say hello. All right, Nick has been granted 1 gallon of strawberry ice cream from Michael Teams. And Michael Teams has also sent his fellow native Texan Sable a gallon of Texas Select 1897 vanilla ice cream. All right, so I'm going to paste, and if someone wants to check the Zoom, I'm going to just go ahead and let's see if we could just show the meeting invite here real quick on Zoom. So let me go ahead and just post it here one more time. And if anyone sees, lets me know if they have a hard time getting it. See if that has the information. Let me just see if I'll just paste it in here as well. All right, so the meeting ID 889-8777-8460, and this is the passcode, and this will be live only after the live stream, so it's not going to be recorded. So if you need more meeting info, let me know on that. We'll try to go back. All right. All right, so let's see, from Carl VH. It says, hey Greg, can I control a macro modulator? Just see, I think it was, can I control a macro modulator with another modulator? So let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so let me just add. Say a retro log track here. I'll just let me just come over here to see if I can add a retro log again here. Hang on. All right. So let me just. All right, so let me control. So I'm going to go to my modulation. Let's just put in LFO. All right, so I want to come over here. Let's control. Let's say this. right, let me just... All right, so here. All right, so now if, let's say I want to also control a different parameter. So let's say I want to add a plugin here. So we could now just come over, let's go to like a volume. So I want to have my volume envelope. Here, I'll just come over here. Let's add. And let's control panning for this instrument. So I will come over, let's adjust our panning. All right, so now I'm going to go to another slot and let's control kind of a macro knob. So I could control, so when I come here, I could say let's control this parameter. So at this point, all right, so let's say I'll just click here. So we'll come, and so then you could just control kind of multiple parameters here. So if you want to do kind of volume, let's adjust, and if you want it to select, you could also just kind of come over here and select, okay, I want to go to modulator 2, let's get to the step modulator, and I want to control, my panning or whatever parameter that you want to, so you can have other modulators control different modulators. All right, James Dazell says, is there any way to get the red bar in, punch in and punch out with Cubase Elements? So let me go ahead and boot up Cubase Elements quickly here. We'll give it a shot and see if we have the punch points. All right, so I'm going to open up Cubase Elements. If you have like Cubase Pro or Artist, you want to open up Elements, hold down the Option or Alt key, and then we'll say, okay, let's go to Cubase Elements 14. All right, so we see punch points, so we can say, okay, so let me just come over here. So let's activate to punch in and activate to punch out. So go to our transport. Okay, so I think it's going to be tied to like our punch in or to our left and right locators, but not the punch points. But let's go ahead and just test. We'll see if it, as we do this, okay, so let's say come here, so it punches in. So it's going to be tied in Cubase Elements, it looks like, to the left and right locators. But in the Cubase Pro version, it can be tied. So once we get to this position here, it will punch out. But in Cubase Pro, we could have what we call punch points, which are independent of those. So we'll see it punch out here and continue on. So it doesn't have so you don't see kind of the red punch points, but you can still punch in and out in the Elements version. All right. All right, we see it's Michael Team's wife Sylvia's birthday, so wish her a happy birthday for us. All right, so let me jump back to Cubase Pro here. All right, so we see Charles Cage is saying roughly what time is the Zoom meeting starting? So about 48 minutes. So we usually do it. So in the East Coast, it's 3 p.m. So it would be 8 p.m. In London time. Okay. Sable says she'll be late for the Zoom. Okay, so I know we had a question last time. We had a question on within WaveLab how to set up Spectral Layers 12 as the external editor. So I was playing around with it after the live stream and kind of found the answer to it, so I wanted to show that quickly. All right, so let's say we have a project here and we want in WaveLab and we want to automatically, when we go to our external editor, for it to go into Spectral Layers 12, and we saw that it was going into Spectral Layers 11. So how to fix that is if you go to your file menu to Preferences, and now we could come over and say, and we go to Global. So go to the Global setting here, and then we'll see External Applications. And for the external editors, if you just click here and then look for, we want to reveal in Finder, and then just simply select your Spectral Layers version 12 here. So let's say you just come over here. So if I set that to Spectral Layers 11, what would happen is when we go to an external editor, it's going to open from within WaveLab. That will go to Spectral Layers 11. But if you just click here, select Spectral Layers 12, then as we do external editing here, we can say, okay, I want to go to my external editor. We see Spectral Layers 12, and that would automatically launch Spectral Layers 12 instead of it reverting back to version 11. So you have to manually assign that inside of WaveLab. So again, go to your file menu to Preferences, to Global, select External Applications, and then at that point you could choose to specify Spectral Layers 12 instead of Spectral Layers 11. All right, go ahead, exit out of WaveLab. All right. All right, so we see the Jazzitude's tiny URL link works. All right. Let me go to another question that was sent in advance. Says, hi Greg, I'm starting to work in film post-production in Nuendo 14. I'm a longtime user of Cubase, and that was the main reason to choose Nuendo as DAW for post-production. Can I ask a Nuendo/Cubase question in the next Club Cubase live stream? Of course, so no problem. It says, in post-production, stems are the base of the final mix. I know how to export stems on several tracks, but how can I export the reverb? Only the reverb that I added to the group as a send as a separate stem. It'd be great if you could show that in the next Club Cubase live stream. Okay. So let's say over here, we'll put a Halion Sonic, so I will put in some we'll just put in a little string action and put a reverb on it. Okay. Okay, so I will come over here. So I'll just put in a couple of notes by a step entry. Okay, so let's say we have our string part that sounds like this. All right, so, and let's put and I want to have, let's say, maybe a drum sound. So I'll come over here. Let's add another instance of Halion Sonic. Okay, so I will okay, so we had two different instances here. I'll put in just quickly some percussion. All right, so I'm going to add a reverb. All right, so a lot of times when people are working in groups, so let's say I'm going to send this to a group channel. So we'll just say this is our strings. And let's come over here. Let's add our percussion group. And let's go ahead and add an effect send to both of these channels here. All right, so now as we play, All right, so if I want to just render the reverb by itself, we can come over here and say, okay, we go to our export audio mixdown. We could just say, okay, I want to just render the reverb by itself. So we'll say, okay, let's go ahead and we'll create an audio track. So we'll say export wave. And now when we listen to this particular track, that's just a reverb that's been recorded as its own source. Now, if we want to, let's say if I select, let's go to our export audio mixdown. All right, and I choose my two group channels. Okay, so we go to multiple. I'm going to choose my two group channels, and we're going to include the groups and sends routing, and we'll create audio tracks for this. Okay, so now when we listen to this track, but you notice that we don't hear any strings. Like it used to be, like I think in 13 or 12, that you would hear the reverb tail of the strings being exported with the groups because it was sharing the same reverb. But now if I go to the strings, we're not going to hear. We don't hear the reverb that's been applied to the particular, we don't hear the reverb of the drums bleeding into our string group, and we don't hear the reverb from the strings bleeding into our mix down. But if you want the reverb to be completely isolated, you could just come over here and just choose to export only the reverb. So when you go to your export audio mix down, if you want just the reverb, we will come over here and just say export just the reverb sends. I'm going to deselect my two groups. So now when we export the file, it's just going to be the particular reverb file here. So that way you could export the reverb separately, but it used to be that people would always have like a separate reverb for each group, so that when they did exports that they wouldn't hear the percussion reverb in the strings or the strings reverb carrying over into the percussion, but that isn't the situation now. So it will only take into account when you export the group, it will not include other sources that are feeding effects that are included within that group. So people would, if you had like 12 groups, they would run 12 independent reverbs on each group. And now you don't have to do that. You could run one single reverb and export without the contaminants or other tracks from different reverbs being applied into your stem mixes. All right. All right, let's jump back to some other questions. See if we got more questions that come in. Okay. You can see Ted Springman says he's doing lots of drum editing on Spectral Layers 12. All right, we see Jazz Dudes just sharing a link, a Discord link on an orchestral template with stems. Okay. All right, let's just go to another question that was sent in. I think I have another one. So a question, is there a way to reset all automated parameters back to neutral from a selected location? So let's say if we had I'll just open up a quick project and let's do some quick automation on it. Let's just, well, I guess we'll do this one here. All right, so let's say I was doing, I'll pop over here. Okay, let's just get my MIDI remote and I'll just put this in. All right, so put this into my mixer. So when I go to my mixer, I'm just going to use my nano control here and we're going to automate. All right, so I take all of my, we'll just globally automate. So say as we're all right, let's say we'll just jump here a little bit. Let's say, okay, we'll go measure 23. All right, so just. All right, so now when we look at automation, we'll see kind of all of our automation. So let's say if we wanted to back to neutral from a selected location. So let's say, so here we have lots of channel automation going on. So let's say I want to delete automation beyond the cursor. So let's come over here to our project logical editor. It's set up and we want to say, let's delete. So our media type is equal to automation. And we'll say the position of that automation is going to be beyond cursor. So at this point, we could just come over here. And now all of the tracks that had automation going on will now, you could just simply delete based right there. So just running or if you wanted to do it within a cycle range, so we could do that. Now, if we notice that the automation here places our tracks kind of at weird volumes and we want to reset all of the channels, like to go back to their initial values, I could select all of these particular channels and I think that we could right click. But I think we could just come over. I think that there's a reset channels command. Let me just see if it's accessed by right click. Let's see if it's a keyboard shortcut. But I think that there's like a reset channel. But you could also, so if we have a number of channels selected, if you hold down the control or command key, and let's say we put this on Q-Link into absolute, I'm just going to hold down my control or command key and click, and then we can just simply come over here. And so once we have a particular channel, I think let's come here. That you could kind of reset the default values. It's usually, make sure I have my keyboard working, just kind of with the command key. But you know, if you want to get rid of the automation, just use kind of like the project logical editor and you could kind of wipe out all automation within the particular project. All right, let's come over to All right, so we see Rob Schmedeke says, Greg, you helped with my past few questions, and I found the solutions. Thanks again. So you're welcome, Rob. It's Rob's checking in from Tarpon Springs, Florida. All right, we'll see if there's other questions. Okay, so we see from Fly V, his question is using samples a bad idea for copyright issues? So no, it's some people will, if you sample someone else's copywritten music, that's probably not the best idea legally unless you want to, pay the owner of that copyright significant amount of money. I remember I was in the studio when they were doing Men in Black, Will Smith, or being in the studio when they were doing that. And, probably if they chose to come up with something very similar with real musicians, they might have been able to not give Patrice Rushdin her biggest hit in decades. So, if it's going to be something that's identifiable, and it could be like if you're taking a sample of someone's kick drum versus taking a musical idea, like maybe a lick or a melody, generally copyright law in the United States, when I was in college, and this is a while ago, was, melody and lyrics. That was what was copywritten. And then and this is when sampling was kind of starting off, and, one of the big cases was Vanilla Ice versus Queen, and then it became kind of a, if it is a recognizable part of the song. So I think working with samples, sometimes what you run into, and I've had users report this, where they use a loop that's in Cubase. The problem is a lot of the detection algorithms will say it's like someone has a copyright for this song and the label will put it into a service, and if someone uses the same loop in their song, it may get flagged because some other person has it as part of their copyright. So it's not necessarily the copyright, but it's maybe the same sound that someone else used. And I've gotten, different cases where someone will approach me, is this like all the sounds that you get with Cubase are going to be, free to use in your productions. That's part of the license. So, but someone may get a copyright on a song that's using one of the loops, and you may get flagged if someone else has already gotten kind of copyright, has a copyright, and it's been kind of fed into almost like an AI algorithm for copyright detection. So in those cases, people have kind of come back and said, yeah, I just used this sound that came with Cubase, and then they will kind of drop any, and they will kind of stop there. But a lot of times it's, a way for people like YouTube to actually sell ads. So if you get, I have to be careful with the songs that I use on a live stream. Otherwise, YouTube would put ads in the videos so that they could get money in case there's a copyright infringement that comes on. So it's not that there's a copyright infringement, it's the potential for copyright infringement. So YouTube will collect money for those scenarios in advance. So you should be okay using samples. Just, if it's going to be something that's very obviously known as something else, I wouldn't do that. And the Men in Black example is a good case of that, where it's pretty obvious where the sample came from, but, you just have to pay the copyright owner, more money for that song once it's caught. But in general, using samples for, that you play, like a piano sample, you can't really copyright that, and shouldn't have any worries about that, Vince. You see Jazz Dude says, don't steal anything from Kraftwerk. They're very known for a very strict attitude. Yeah, so. I think Tom Petty's biggest hit was the Sam Smith song that sounded a lot like, Won't Back Down. So, All right, we see Gerald Ely joining from Martinez, California. All right, we see Randy Lee's received 1 gallon of banana nut ice cream. Okay, so we see Michael Marshall joining from Somerset, UK. All right. All right, and we see maybe Jazz Dude could post the link for the Zoom meetup. He has a tiny URL that probably works better. Okay. All right, so Martin is just saying, how can I use multiple instances of Steinberg Supervision plugin and compare, example, a before and after effect chain result in one window graph in different colors? Okay, so all right, let's set up the scenario here. Okay, so let's say we have all right, so let's say on the effects, I want to, we'll put some dynamics on it. Okay, so I'm going to come over and let's go to, let's say, my Supervision. And let's say we want to go to maybe our spectral domain. So let's say we want to do a spectrum bar here. All right, and I want to come over and let's see, I think that we could open up another instance of, so I'm going to come over here, let's open up a second instance of, and we'll say this is going to be our spectral domain. So we'll say, okay, so we'll have our spectral bar here. Okay, now on this one, let's see if we could change, so we could have the stereo output. But let's say I want this to be like the mixdown file. So if we come here, so I'll just do something like obnoxious with an EQ here and see if we see the difference, because sometimes we could have the EQs at different stages. So let's say if I go to my studio EQ here and we just, all right, so we could have like the mix down, we can see kind of the mid side, but so if we have, so sometimes we could take a look at kind of the different stages here. Let's say if I had these effects in a group channel. All right, let me just, all right, let's see if we do like a freeze. If we come over, let's say we play this. All right, so say if we have this to sync. Sometimes we could, I know we could do kind of like the stereo versus the mix down. Let me see if that's global for each one of these. Okay, let me see if I open up a second instance of Supervision. So we have this one. Let me go to a second instance. Okay, and this is set to stereo. We open up this instance here. Yeah, so I don't know a way to easily kind of compare before and after. We just see if we come over here. Let me just stop that. Sorry. But let's come over here. Yeah, so sometimes we could take kind of different. And let's say if we add a sidechain input, let's see if that would show us the original material. Looks like it's going to show us kind of the same with effects or without effects on it. But sometimes, we could have kind of different sidechain inputs as well. I could play around with it over the weekend and see if I could have maybe a better answer on Tuesday's live stream. But, generally we could kind of pick and choose kind of different. All right, so let's say here I'm in the sidechain. So let's say I want to do stereo sidechain. Let's see if that has any impact on it as our kind of our source. So here we have stereo sidechain versus stereo, if that takes into account the processing here. So if say we turn this on, you see it kind of affect both. So I'll see if I can I'll play around with it over the weekend, see if there's like some routing thing that we could do, or do, if we put it on a group, maybe that might make a difference as well. So sorry, I couldn't come up with a better answer than that. All right, let me just take a look at other questions here. All right, so we see from Rishab Saxena, please tell me differences between Elastic Pro and Elastic Pro format pitch, which is better for pitching vocal sample or melody sample. So probably if you're going to be doing, the formants would allow you to kind of retain kind of the same character when kind of raising or lowering pitch. So if you're doing kind of lead vocals, I would probably choose to do it on formants. because that way, like, sometimes when you speed up like a male vocal and you raise the pitch, it could sound like all of a sudden a female is singing it. And that's because the formants have been shifted. So if you use kind of the formants, that will kind of preserve the formants. It could raise the pitch without kind of, almost like it almost sounds like you're, changing the character of the voice. So for lead vocals, I would probably choose for the algorithm to be, with the formants. All right. See, Ted Springman says best rule is to sound design your loops a lot and to sidestep copyright issues and change pitch. So yeah. All right. All right, David Blue says, hi Greg, in Halion Sonic, how can you change the cutoff depending on velocity, CC74 using the MIDI transformer with the MIDI modifier in Cubase? So if you want it, so let's say, and it could be different on every instrument that you do in Halion Sonic. So let's say if I come over here, just so the cutoff in Amped Electra could be different than the cutoff in other libraries. So let's say if I wanted to come over here to just find we'll do kind of just a generic kind of synth. Okay, so let's say if I want to come over here. All right, so reread the question. How can you change a cutoff depending on the velocity? C74 using the MIDI transformer. So again, it could be a little different. So like, let's say if you wanted to have your LFO, if you're doing it in Retrolog, it's pretty easy to do. But let's say, so I'm not sure which particular instrument in Halion Sonic, because different instruments will respond to different CCs. But if we come over, so you say, depending on velocity, CC74 using MIDI transformer. So if we go to your MIDI so let's go to your MIDI inserts, and let's go to the transformer here. And we could say we want to transform, and we'll say velocity. And we want to transform velocity into type is set to controller. And we'll say the subtype is going to be equal, set to fixed value, and we'll say 74. So let's see if I come in, just mute this, but I'll record just some quick MIDI with this, with different velocity values. Okay, so all right, so we have our different velocity values, and then let's see if we do a freeze MIDI modifiers, if that changes them into 74. So let's see if we could do it with an input transformer, see if this logic is working. So we'll put it on a track. Now let's open up the channel. So let's say if we do inside range 0 to 127. And let's see if we could set it to our type. Okay, so let's say if we come over and let me open up the MIDI inserts, and I'll just do a MIDI monitor. So we can see that anytime that I play a particular note here, that it's taking, so when I hit the note, it's going to automatically transform that note into our continuous controller right there. So we can see as we do this, so when I hit the notes, if I bypass this and I hit notes, we just have note on, note off messages. But when this is on, when I do this, we could transmit and transfer those velocities into controller 74. So we still have the note on, note off message, but it's automatically taking our velocity and converting the velocity into CC74. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right. All right. Reading through comments. We'll be starting here in about 5 minutes. See, Martin just says, did send an email about other things on Supervision. Yeah, so please do to clubcubase at steinberg.de. All right, we see Michael Pierce joining from Grand Chapel Studios. He's mastering and teaching all day. David Blues just says he was sad to hear about Darren Jones passing. So I think buying his book is a great tribute, and it should be able to financially help his family as well. All right. All right, we'll see if there's any other questions. If not, we'll get the Zoom social started just a little bit early. See if there's more questions before we kind of migrate over to the Zoom. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and start migrating. I'm going to start the Zoom meeting. So I'll share just the Zoom. So the meeting ID is here, as well as the passcode. So I'm going to go ahead and start the Zoom up. All right, so we see people joining already. All right, we see it's Brian Sawyer, we see Augie, Michael Marshall, we see Gareth, John Perry, Vince, Tim Weinheimer, we have Wilfried. Ready? We have Nick. All right.
Howdy.
Great to see everyone. All right.
Gareth.
Vince. Reed. Ready? We have Nick. All right.
Howdy.
Great to see everyone. All right. Garrett. Uno Memento joining. Reed. Thomas Van Dyke. All right.
Howdy.
Great to see everyone. All right. Garrett. Uno Memento joining. All right.
Hi, Vince.
Good to see Rick. Thomas Van Dyke. So Vince, I think we hear like kind of the audio coming back through your system. All right.
Hi, Vince.
Hello. Sorry about that.
Hey Vince, no problem. All right, we see Charles K joining. We'll give a couple more minutes and then we'll wrap up the Club Cubase meeting here. I'll turn my camera on.
There he is.
Cubase meeting here. Okay. Thomas Van Dyke is in the process of joining.
I think Rick's got a new hair color.
Who do you think has a new hair color?
Who?
Rick.
Me? Oh, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. It was COVID did it for him. Yeah.
It was COVID. It's from the COVID. Same thing as this.
Weird.
That's all COVID.
Has a new hair color.
Me?
Hello, people.
What do you think?
Hi from Finland.
Hey, Uno, how are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. And you?
Yes.
All right, let's see if there's anyone else that's joining. So I'll just put the meeting ID and the passcode up. Let's see. Probably some more people joining here in a minute.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. And you?
All right, let's see if there's anyone else that's joining. So I'll just put the meeting ID and the passcode up. Some more people joining here in a minute. All right, we'll give it one more minute and else joining. So I'll just put the meeting ID and the passcode.
Howdy, Thomas.
That sounds like Byron. How you doing, buddy?
Not bad.
How's Arizona treating you?
Okay, I guess. I finally got over a 5-week cough, but that's because I went back to North Carolina and got my wife and drove back, and it's just been miserable.
Not
bad. But the weather's cooling down, and
Okay, I guess.
I'm still waiting for my old house to sell so I can fix my studio up. But I can't do squat because as soon as the house sells, I got to move everything out of the studio and level the floor, and then put everything back in.
All right, so I'm just seeing Lawrence from Barn Door Recording. I'm going to paste the...
I can't do squat because as soon as...
All right, so I see Jazz, you just did that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the live stream. So we'll see everyone back on Tuesday. So let me go ahead and end the live stream, and then we'll migrate over to the Zoom. All right, so I see Jazz, you just did that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the... Okay, so our live stream is wrapped up now. Tuesday.